Yeah.
Good morning and welcome to Rideau Hall. Bonjour et bienvenue à Rideau Hall. To begin this swearing-in ceremony of the members of the 29th Canadian Ministry, please rise and welcome the Ministers Designate, the Prime Minister, and the Governor-General of Canada. Pour débuter cette cérémonie d'assermentation des membres du 29e Conseil des ministres canadiens, veuillez vous lever et accueillir les ministres désignés, le Premier ministre et le Gouverneur général du Canada. Please be seated. Veuillez vous asseoir. The Clerk of the Privy Council will now seek the Governor-General's consent to proceed. La greffière du Conseil privé demandera maintenant à la Gouverneur générale la permission de procéder.
Excellence, pouvons-nous commencer? Excellency, maybe begin. Yes. Thank you.
With the Governor-General's approval, we will now proceed with the ceremony. Maintenant que la Gouverneure générale a signifié son approbation, nous procéderons à la cérémonie. The ministers who are Privy Councillors and who are changing responsibilities will please come forward to take the oath of office. Les ministres qui sont membres du Conseil privé et qui changent de responsabilité sont priés de s'avancer pour prêter le serment d'office. The Honourable Filomena Tassi, Minister responsible for the Federal Economic Development Agency for Southern Ontario. L'Honorable Filomena Tassi, Ministre responsable de l'Agence fédérale de développement économique pour le Sud de l'Ontario.
I, Filomena Tassi, do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as Minister responsible for the Federal Economic Development Agency for Southern Ontario, so help me God. Thank you.
The Honourable Helena Jaczek, Minister of Public Services and Procurement. L'Honorable Helena Jaczek, Ministre des Services Publics et de l'Approvisionnement.
Helena Jaczek do solemnly and sincerely promise and declare that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Moi, Helena Jaczek, je promets et déclare solennellement et sincèrement qu'au mieux de ma compétence et de ma connaissance, j'exécuterai loyalement et fidèlement le pouvoir et je m'acquitterai des responsabilités qui m'ont été confiées en qualité de ministre des Services publics et de l'approvisionnement.
The Governor General, the Prime Minister, and the Clerk of the Privy Council will now sign the oath book. La Gouverneure Générale, le Premier Ministre et la greffière du Conseil privé apposeront maintenant leur signature sur le registre des serments. Ladies and gentlemen, to conclude the ceremony, please join me in congratulating the members of the 29th Canadian Ministry. Mesdames et messieurs, pour terminer la cérémonie, applaudissons les membres du 29e Conseil des ministres. Thank you for being here today at Rideau Hall. Merci de votre présence ici à Rideau Hall aujourd'hui. Merci.
Oh, it's like ready to go.
Yeah.
So you just like call bell and you're ready to go.
There wasn't enough. It was like
Oh.
fire resistant.
Oh.
And they just plugged in. And
It's fast.
good. Yeah.
1 minute.
That's amazing.
And
That's amazing.
you can't get faster than that where you're adjusted.
I don't want to pay for it.
How fast?
It's like $56 a month.
I'm paying 61 or something
For what?
for the fastest Rogers package, which is slow. Only 30.
But do you have like, are you bundled?
No. Oh, with my cell phone, sort of. All the same bill. Yeah, there's some sort of warning. I don't know if it was a two-minute warning. They said staff would come up first. Here we go.
Bon matin tout le monde. a number of issues recently when it comes to passports, travel, as well as immigration, but you didn't make any changes to this proposal. Why didn't you do a bigger reset to your cabinet to address those issues?
It's been less than a year since the last election, and our government is working extremely hard every day to support Canadians and to deliver the support necessary. We've seen over the past many months real challenges here in Canada and around the world, and our government is focused on working every single day to be there to support Canadians through this difficult time, and that's the hard work we're going to continue doing.
Next question.
Ça fait moins qu'un an depuis les dernières élections, et notre gouvernement travaille extrêmement fort à tous les jours pour livrer concrètement pour les Canadiens. On reconnaît qu'il y a énormément de défis dans le monde, ici au Canada aussi, mais nous sommes là pour travailler et pour faire les améliorations nécessaires pour livrer pour les Canadiens dans un moment de, effectivement, énormément de défis à travers le monde et au Canada.
Prochaine question.
Raymond Fillon de TVA. Les provinces, dont Québec, comme vous le savez, réclament haut et fort des milliards de transferts supplémentaires pour la santé. Dans ce contexte, qu'est-ce que vous pensez de voir M. Legault annoncer des milliards en baisse d'impôts?
Comme j'ai dit depuis le début, comme on a démontré pendant la pandémie, le gouvernement fédéral est là pour appuyer les provinces, est là pour appuyer les systèmes de santé à travers le pays. On a investi plus de 70 milliards de dollars de plus en dépenses et investissements en santé au cours de la pandémie. Et comme j'ai toujours dit, nous allons être là pour investir plus dans le système de santé. Mais on sait très bien que ce n'est pas juste une question de plus d'argent, il faut qu'on ait les résultats pour les Canadiens, les résultats concrets pour les Québécois. Et c'est les conversations qu'on est en train d'avoir. Il y a trop de gens qui n'ont pas de médecin de famille, il y a trop de gens qui attendent trop longtemps pour avoir des services de santé mentale. Nous allons être là avec des investissements de plus, mais nous devons pouvoir rassurer tous les Canadiens que tous les investissements, que ce soit provincial ou fédéral, vont livrer de vrais résultats, de vraies améliorations dans les systèmes de santé, et c'est les conversations que nous allons avoir.
Mais est-ce que quand on sentir des baisses d'impôts, quand on veut des milliards du fédéral?
C'est une question pour M. Legault.
Next question.
Morning, Mia Rask from the Canadian Press. You sat down with the Premier of Ontario yesterday. We understand healthcare was probably a prominent topic in that conversation. Canadians are extremely concerned about the state of their healthcare system. When is this impasse between the federal government and the provinces over funding going to end?
I would suggest that there's not really an impasse right now, because we demonstrated through the pandemic, the federal government was there to step up over $70 billion in additional funding for healthcare. And I've been saying consistently, and we've always had the position that yes, we will be there for more investments in healthcare. I think all Canadians know that it's not just a question of putting more money into the system, it's a question of making real improvements in the system. Canadians need better access to family doctors. Canadians need lower wait times for surgeries, for mental health supports. There are solutions that need to be brought forward that are on the delivery of healthcare that we are going to be working with the provinces because they have the expertise, they have the responsibility, but Canadians need results. So yes, we will be there with more investments in healthcare, but we need to be able to demonstrate to Canadians that those results are going to be tangibly delivered for them.
Prochaine question.
Bonjour, Christian Noël de Radio-Canada. À propos de GNL Québec, si Québec revient à la charge après l'élection, allez-vous être ouvert au projet? Et est-ce que c'est quelque chose dont vous avez discuté spécifiquement avec le chancelier allemand la semaine passée?
Tout d'abord, pour tout projet de cette envergure, il y a des évaluations environnementales, il y a un processus réglementaire extrêmement important. Le projet d'origine de GNL Québec n'a pas passé les processus environnementaux de la province du Québec. Et c'est même pas rendu à notre niveau à ce niveau-là. Et évidemment, on accepte tous la bonne décision que le Québec a prise, que ce n'était pas le bon projet au niveau environnemental. Si des gens veulent ramener un nouveau projet ou un projet différent, bien, ça passera les étapes réglementaires au Québec et au Canada s'il y a lieu. Mais je ne veux pas m'avancer sur des résultats de processus qui n'ont pas été faits sur un projet qui n'a pas été dessiné encore. On a parlé effectivement de gaz naturel avec l'Allemagne, mais ce qu'on a toujours dit, c'est que oui, on va faire tout ce qu'on peut pour vous aider dans le court terme, dans le moyen terme, dans le long terme. Mais il y a deux choses. Il y a un processus réglementaire pour tous ces projets qui vont être respectés. Mais il y a aussi la question de est-ce qu'il y a un cas d'affaires, est-ce que l'Allemagne a besoin de ce gaz naturel qui viendrait dans la décennie à venir, mais pas dans l'hiver ou les 2 hivers qui viennent où leurs besoins sont les plus accrus. On a eu des conversations, mais il y a encore énormément de conversations à avoir entre différents partenaires.
Next question.
Good morning, David Aiken, Global News. Good morning, Prime Minister. Ministers, good luck with your new roles. Question for you, Prime Minister. There's some stories that Canadian intelligence services paid a so-called spy informant for information combating ISIS. This particular informant was involved in smuggling women, including a Canadian girl apparently, into ISIS territory to be ISIS brides. I wonder if you think that's appropriate that intelligence services were paying somebody, and then secondly is, apparently the Canadian government and the British government has basically conspired to cover up this information for the last 5 years, and that must concern you.
Obviously, we know we live in a particularly dangerous world. The fight against terrorism requires our intelligence services to continue to be flexible and to be creative in their approaches, but every step of the way, they're bound by strict rules, by principles and values that Canadians hold dear, including around the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and we expect that those rules be followed. I know there are questions about certain incidents or operations of the past, and we will ensure to follow up on those.
Next question.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Paige Parson, CBC News. To follow up on David's question, are you concerned about whether our intelligence agency, which does not have formal overseas remit, went too far in recruiting an ISIS facilitator and then covering it up, and will you commit to a full accounting of what happened?
Our intelligence services are subject to rigorous rules and principles that they need to abide by, including upholding the values, principles, the laws of Canada. And there are rigorous oversight mechanisms that are in place with the clearances necessary to look into the operations and the decisions taken by intelligence services in their work to keep Canada and Canadians safe in a very dangerous world. We will continue to ensure that proper oversight is done, and as necessary, look at further steps if necessary.
Next question.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Ryan Tell with the National Post. When Parliament returns in a couple of weeks, Canadians will have been going through a year of inflation now, a year of higher prices at grocery stores, for gas pumps, for everything. Are you concerned, and are you going to be offering some new measures to address that inflation?
We know that Canadians are facing real challenges with increases in the cost of living, with prices at the pump, prices for groceries, challenges around housing, and we have as a government been there to support Canadians in a range of ways, whether it was increasing the Canada Child Benefit in line with inflation, whether it's moving forward on increasing the OAS for our most elderly seniors, or whether it's moving forward on historic childcare agreements that are saving thousands upon thousands of dollars across the country for families with young children already. But we know there's more to do. We're going to keep doing that. At the same time, we have to remember that the Canadian economy has recovered more jobs more quickly than even the US has following the pandemic, because Canadians were there for each other. We invested in each other. We have historic low unemployment right now. Lots of people have jobs, but there are still real challenges, and we're going to continue to do what is necessary to support vulnerable Canadians as we move forward, taking into account inflation, but also being careful not to do things that will accelerate or exacerbate the inflation crisis we're facing.
Next question.
Alex Donegal, Toronto Star. Just going back to healthcare, your meeting with Premier Ford yesterday, he came out of that saying that you guys had agreed that there's an urgent need to address the crisis in healthcare in the province. So I'm wondering if you committed to anything new for the province to help with what's going on with hospitals, and if you discussed or shared your thoughts with him on any of the proposals they have, like their bill to push to free up space in hospitals by putting people into long-term care homes?
As I've always said, I respect that it is to the provinces to deliver health care. Provinces do it differently across the country, and they have the full remit to make those decisions. But I also reminded the Premier that I am there, that the federal government will be there as a partner to ensure that Canadians get good, high-quality health care right across the country, including by being there with more funding. But as the Premier pointed out, it's not a bilateral conversation. There's lots of provinces, as people are facing challenges across the country, that need to work together, and we will be there to do that. But I think everyone understands, and certainly the Premier understands as well, we need to see results for Canadians. We need to show that new monies invested in healthcare are going to deliver better outcomes for Canadians in a tangible way, because that's what people are facing right now as a significant challenge.
Next question.
Cormac McSweeney with City News. The Board of Directors at Hockey Canada released a statement saying they have full support, they're giving their full support to the executive team at Hockey Canada. Your government and many Canadians have been demanding a change in the organization, suggestions of a change in leadership as well. What's your reaction to the organization sticking with a team that's faced a lot of criticism for its handling of the sexual assault allegations? And is there a scenario in which you would restore federal funding to Hockey Canada if the executive team in place remains in place?
I'm not speaking just as a politician now, but as a dad, as a parent. We need to have confidence in the kinds of organizations that don't just provide opportunities and activities for our kids, but provide so many role models and heroes to our kids and shape our weekends, our winters, and our country. Making sure that Canadians have confidence in those organizations is a basic need, and it's fairly clear that both the government and Canadians in general have lost confidence in the leadership at Hockey Canada. And the longer it takes for Hockey Canada to realize that, the more difficulties they're going to face. En tant que politicien, oui, mais surtout en tant que parent, je sais à quel point les organisations qui sont là pour offrir des activités, de l'apprentissage, l'esprit d'équipe, des communautés et de l'inspiration, tellement de nos jeunes à travers le pays doivent avoir la confiance des Canadiens, doivent avoir la confiance des parents sur la culture qu'ils sont en train de partager avec nos jeunes, avec notre pays. Et c'est très clair que depuis plusieurs mois, le gouvernement et les Canadiens n'ont plus confiance dans la direction de Hockey Canada. Et le plus ça en prend longtemps pour comprendre ce fait qui me semble assez évident et de base, le plus ça va continuer d'aller mal pour eux, le plus il y aura des questions pointues sur pourquoi est-ce qu'ils ne comprennent pas à quel point ça prend des vrais changements.
On va prendre une dernière question.
Bonjour Marie-Vastel Devoir. J'aimerais revenir sur la question de la sécurité des élus, mais vraiment plus précisément sur la solution. Il semble y avoir des visions divergentes autour de la table du cabinet, puis aussi au sein du gouvernement, entre les gens du Québec, où l'idée d'un garde du corps ou d'un chauffeur formé pour protéger son ministre est bien établie, cette idée-là est bien établie, et ailleurs au Canada où on a une hésitation encore à faire cette étape-là. J'aimerais savoir qu'est-ce qui vous retient encore d'apporter une protection, de doter vos ministres d'un service de protection, puis vous logez où là-dessus sur cette idée de doter les ministres d'un garde du corps?
Mais tout d'abord, Marie, c'est pas une nouvelle conversation pour nous. On se souvient que depuis plusieurs années, on a vu la ministre McKenna faire face à des menaces et des situations extrêmement problématiques. On a vu d'autres parlementaires accoster sur la colline du Parlement. Cette question de sécurité pour le ministre est une question dont on discute depuis plusieurs années. Et on a regardé, on est en train d'établir certaines pistes de solutions. Mais je comprends qu'il y a des divisions un petit peu là-dessus, ou des différences de perspective plus que des divisions. Je pense qu'en tant que Canadiens, politiciens et citoyens, on est tous très fiers qu'on n'a pas besoin du niveau de sécurité qu'on voit aux États-Unis ou ailleurs dans le monde. Le Canada est un pays énormément plus paisible, où ça fait du bien de voir la ministre des Affaires étrangères au Provigo un samedi matin. C'est quelque chose qui a une force dans notre démocratie, dans notre société. Mais en même temps, on doit reconnaître que les conversations politiques, le débat devient plus amer, plus agressif. Les citoyens, malheureusement, comme on a vu, prennent de temps en temps de plus en plus de liberté pour offrir des menaces et des attaques, particulièrement contre des femmes en position de pouvoir, que ce soit des parlementaires ou des journalistes. Et c'est quelque chose qui doit nous inquiéter profondément en tant que démocratie. Évidemment, nous devons d'assurer la sécurité de tous ceux et surtout celles qui choisissent de servir. Sinon, ces bullies vont avoir un impact direct sur la capacité des parlementaires de faire leur job, de représenter les Canadiens, et vont décourager de bonnes personnes de vouloir se présenter en politique. Et c'est l'affaire à nous tous. Oui, je comprends, et on est en train de regarder comment on peut offrir plus de sécurité de façon plus structurée. C'est des dépenses qu'on n'aimerait pas avoir faire. Il y a d'autres investissements pour garder nos communautés en sécurité, pour garder pour éliminer les armes à feu, pour faire d'autres investissements qu'on est en train de faire aussi, qui pourraient être investis plutôt que pour de protéger les parlementaires. Mais nous devons de protéger nos parlementaires et c'est le débat qu'on est en train d'avoir. Mais la réalité, c'est que l'environnement dans lequel on est, où il y a encore plus d'agression, de toxicité en ligne et ailleurs, c'est un lien direct avec la façon que les débats se mènent au Parlement et les propos que les parlementaires s'envoient les uns envers les autres. Et je pense que c'est essentiel que tous les chefs de tous les partis soient unis dans leur condamnation de l'agression, de la violence, que tous les parlementaires comprennent que c'est sérieux et de ne pas le minimiser, et comprennent leur responsabilité de mettre les termes du débat et de démontrer un niveau de respect les uns pour les autres qui servent tous ce pays.
Mais vous, pensez-vous que chaque ministre doit avoir un garde-corps?
Je pense que c'est une décision extrêmement personnelle pour bien des ministres. Je pense qu'on devrait avoir plus de possibilités d'en avoir. Je sais que si vous parlez de différences d'opinion régionaux, moi j'ai vu des différences d'opinion entre des hommes et des femmes, des gens qui se sentent plus vulnérables, qui ont vécu plus de discrimination et plus de moments de peur dans leur vie que d'autres. Et nous devons d'en faire plus et le ministre des Affaires de la Sécurité publique est en train de regarder ça. I think it's extremely important that we demonstrate the strength of our democracy. And part of the strength of our democracy is being able to see the Minister of Defense going shopping on the weekend at a local IGA. We need to be able to have that connection that we've always prided ourselves in, of Canadians being able to have proximity to those who represent them. It's been a point of pride for Canada. But the aggressive, bullying, hate-filled tactics of a small number of people is causing us to have to rethink the freedoms that we've had as parliamentarians and as Canadians in a democracy to walk down the street alongside a member of parliament. And it's unfortunate. It really is. But we need to make sure that people who are doing their jobs and serving their communities and serving their country, including at the highest levels, feel safe in the job that they're doing, aren't worried for their families, aren't worried that they're putting at risk their loved ones because they are serving their communities, either as journalists or as politicians. There's a huge reflection. We have to have both the kind of country we want to be and to understand that the tone of our democracy, the tone of our political debates is set by those politicians who get sent to Ottawa to represent their communities. And if there isn't clear condemnation of the kind of cowardly bullying we've seen, of the kind of hate-filled rants and violent words used against people, to say this has no place in our democracy, we can disagree, and we need to disagree with each other on policies, on perspectives. That's a robust debate that has to happen amongst Canadians to make sure we're getting it right as a collective, as a country. But to limit the ability of women, of racialized Canadians to serve in government or to hold government to account as journalists, which is the goal of a number of Canadians with very loud voices, well, that's something all parliamentarians and all leaders need to stand against, need to be unequivocal in being responsible leaders, to say, no, we are not going to become that toxic, polarized country that some think we should become. We need to keep listening to each other, we need to keep standing up for each other, but we need to be respectful of our political opponents.
Do either of the ministers want to comment on that, their own experience in politics?
Certainly, I echo, obviously, what the Prime Minister has said. I go shopping in my neighborhood, and people recognize me, and it is one of the best connections that I have with my constituents. And I don't want to be intimidated in any way from missing out on those opportunities to relate directly to my constituents. I certainly have been subject, especially during the last election, to verbal abuse and somewhat intimidating behavior. But all I can do is just carry on. I just put one foot in front of the other, and it's my desire to maintain those connections with the people that I represent to the extent possible.
Can I just ask another? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I'd like the opportunity to comment on this. Look, clearly my behavior has changed. And I think, as the Prime Minister has indicated, there's a role for all Canadians here. If Canadians don't enter into this dialogue, it's going to get worse and it's going to escalate. If this behavior is accepted as a norm, then we are going to be in a position that's far graver than we're in now. And I think there's a role for all Canadians to play in being vocal about that. As the Prime Minister has indicated, politicians included. I am a strong believer in positive politics. I have engaged in positive politics since the time I was elected in 2015. And you know what, folks? Positive politics works. We can change the decorum in the House by ensuring that every response that we have is a positive one. No room for insults, for low blows, for aggressive behavior. And so I think it starts with us because we know that we do not, because the gravest thing here is that we are going to have people, as the Prime Minister has indicated, we will not have people stepping up to enter political life, to serve as journalists, because they're afraid for themselves, and maybe even graver, they're concerned for the safety of their family. And that's the situation. It's a sad reality. So we need to act. So I'm very grateful for that question.
Can I just follow up on that for both ministers? Minister Tassi, you said that you changed your behavior.
Yes.
Would you like to have either a driver that is trained and armed, or just one person that would be essentially a security personnel, and Minister, I'm going to say your name wrong, Minister Jaczek, I'm sorry, you want to keep that contact with the public, and that's a valid point, but I wonder, just having one person with you, I'm not sure how that prevents you from going to the IGA or talking with your constituents, so can you just elaborate on that with me, please?
So I think that the measures are very important, and we have taken measures that do provide for greater comfort, but those measures are not the solution. I can't have somebody, excuse me, by my side 24/7. That's not the answer. When I'm walking out to water the garden, or to chat with a neighbor, or to walk the dog, or to take a walk with my son, that's not the answer. The answer is this behavior has to be ended. And I think we can do that if we work together to have Canadians step up and say that this is unacceptable. You can advocate and represent constituents' views and advocate and be very strong in political representation. And you know the best way to do that is by a smart, intelligent argument, not through insults and accusations. So although I do appreciate measures are important, and yes, they provide some level of safety and security, monitoring our homes, for example, with cameras, but at the end of the day, that's not going to be enough. We have to go beyond that and really encourage Canadians to step up and say, folks, this isn't acceptable. And it's going to take us and result in grave consequences if we don't do that.
Well, I certainly echo Minister Tassi's comments. This is unacceptable behavior. It's not Canadian behavior. It's surprising. I think perhaps we're seeing more of this type of aggressive intimidation because of what we've been through over the last couple of years. I mean, COVID-19 has certainly taken a toll on everyone, not just from the health impact, obviously, of those who have succumbed or suffered from the illness, but also in terms of our inability to interact with each other normally, socially, and so on. But, you know, when you're confronted with a bully, what do? You stand up. You give your point of view. It's not an argument, it's simply a question of stating your beliefs. And Minister Tassi has said it extremely well. That's what I've done. I've been in public life for a number of years. And at the end of the day, people tend to back down. Now, on the actual personal protective side, I'm sure you know, we're all issued with devices that we can press that bring protective services, local police to our aid if necessary, and that's of a certain amount of reassurance. But I think just simply standing up to bullying behavior is something that is essential that we all do, and that's the way I conduct myself.
Merci beaucoup, c'est ce qu'elle a fait à la conférence de presse d'aujourd'hui.